It's live streamed and what?
Union contract if they were.
So we're gonna call the meeting to
Actually, I
order.
think teachers are prohibited
Right.
Yeah.
Six.
from
All right.
serving on school boards in any way in school district.
All right.
That's true with community.
All right, we're gonna call the Tuesday, March 26th Wood Village Council meeting to order. Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear us out there?
Well, you're coming through loud and clear. I hope you can hear me.
Awesome.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and do land acknowledgement. Would somebody like to read it?
The Chinookan peoples known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of Columbia River. The village of Nechachokee, now referred to as Nechockley, was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these peoples included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas in the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since the time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systematic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native leaders and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag
Yes,
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. We have citizen comments on non-agenda items.
No citizen comments.
Nope. Go ahead and jump to consent calendar.
approve the consent calendar.
Yes.
Been moved in second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That calendar passes. Don't, since the budget committee appointments are with the consent calendar, we're all good to go. Perfect. On to the urban renewal. The open,
So, yeah, convene the meeting as the Urban Renewal Board and then open a public hearing.
call a public hearing open or?
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you, Mr. Chair. For you tonight, we have a resolution adopting a supplemental budget change. That notice of supplemental budget was published within the required timeframe. I think it was 2 Fridays ago. I can't remember the date, which talked about all of the changes that we're proposing. So this is fairly straightforward for the Urban Renewal Board. At the February 27th meeting, the board provided direction. Agency Manager Dirks came and presented that there were some leftover or unspent bond funds that we needed to try and get spent. And so he presented 2 projects as a way of doing that. One was putting an electronic message center sign as part of the design for the North Gateway sign, with the estimated cost of about $70,000, $20,000 for the electrical to get it to the median and $50,000 for the sign. And then he talked about the restroom project here at Donald Robertson Park and how it was a project that qualifies for urban renewal bond funds and would, we have had some, I think that the idea was that spending those funds and then preserving some ARPA money and general funds for other projects that had less restrictions on them. So of those bonds, we spent about 3.1 million of the 3.4 that we issued. So there's somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000 of unallocated funds that need to be spent. So as part of that meeting, the board directed, in order to actually make that to adopt appropriation changes through a supplemental budget process. So before you tonight, we have prepared an increase the transfer to streets for the electronic sign of $85,000 and a transfer to the general fund of $185,000, as well as a increase in personnel costs, which arose because of this is one that's a housekeeping item we normally wouldn't bring as part of a supplemental budget, but since we know about it, we are asking for that change. And the reason why the total transfers is $270,000 instead of the $240 that was talked about at your last meeting is we're not entirely sure which one's going to cost more or less. And we wanted to make sure that we had the budgetary authority that, say, the street sign, instead of needing an additional $70,000, only needs 50, that then that money could be redirected to the restroom. And since one's being transferred to the street fund and one's being transferred to the general fund, we're increasing the appropriation so that staff has flexibility. If there's cost savings in any one of those, that we still can make sure to expend all of the bond funds. So that's why the numbers are a little different. Once we started putting together the package, we realized we need to have some flexibility. And so that's what we put in there. That is it for the presentation. It's fairly straightforward. Any questions?
We need to close the public hearing first. Ask questions.
I think council can discuss public hearing. Is that correct?
Well, you can have what I would do is formally ask if there's anybody who wants to testify. And then say, seeing none, we return.
Is there anybody in the public that would like to testify? Turn it over to council to ask any questions or discussions.
None for me.
Mayor, any questions?
No questions. We've covered this pretty well. I appreciate the flexibility that staff's going to have because we really don't know the final numbers yet. So I think it's a real solid recommendation.
Questions? I would, motion.
I move to approve resolution URA 01-2024, a resolution authorizing the appropriation of contingency and making supplemental appropriations to the fund.
I'll second that.
First and second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
So I think you can close the Urban Renewal Board meeting entirely.
Now we'll adjourn the Urban Renewal Board and resume to council session.
Council meeting. Now you'll need to open a public hearing for the city council's supplemental budget.
Open a public hearing for the city council supplemental budget.
Council President, councilors, thank you. Again, so we're here to talk about a resolution doing some supplemental appropriation changes. There's two of those that would require a public notice and the ability for the input from the public to come and testify. I'll cover those and then I'll go through some housekeeping items that we use this opportunity to do to kind of clean things up so that things are a little bit more transparent and clear cut as far as where we're spending money. So there's two projects. The first, just took action as the Urban Renewal Board to transfer money to the city. We are now going to take that money and appropriate it so we can spend it as the city. So I'll see if there's any questions about that, but this is the other half of that transaction to make sure that we now spend it. The other project that we want to talk about is the SCADA project, which you guys have heard lots about. This is the brains of our water and sewer system. Back almost 2 years ago, council approved expanding the contract with Communication Systems Northwest to $275,000. That was to try and get it all done at once. At your December 12th, 2023 meeting, Public Works Director John Niama, who's not here, and will accept blame for anything that goes wrong for this project, Brought to you kind of that in the course of the last year of work, and he provided a detailed, I think 2 pages worth of listing. There were a number of sites that once they got into realized needed more work than they had originally anticipated. And a lot of that was they thought that they could just swap out components, not realizing that some of the programming as they were going through and essentially rebuilding a lot of these facilities also needed to be rebuilt because it was functional, but functional in the way that is caulk and duct tape to keep something moving for a long period of time. And that it was going to cause more of a problem going forward than just to stop and fix it now. And that requires time from the programmers that Communication Systems Northwest had. In addition, there were, as we were going through and staff was going through, that included utility staff, project management staff, and the public works director kind of talking through the system. We realized that there were some components that we didn't have that as they stopped and thought about it, we really should be adding some more redundancy and or pieces to the puzzle to help manage this in a more effective way. So all that to say, new sites were added at some of the additional sites, or some of the sites that were in scope. It was discovered that there was more that was required in order to actually get the system that we wanted. So council authorized at the December 12th meeting an increase to that contract to a do not exceed amount of $435,000. So the council took action to increase the contract, but we didn't actually take action to increase the appropriation so that we could spend the money at that time because we still had a little bit of time and the work. We wanted to get a final number for you guys before we brought back any appropriation change. So with that, I'm going to, there we go. Talk to you a little bit about some project totals that we have. So the project is wrapping up and should be completed fairly soon. We've spent $480,000. And the reason for that is the contract, the first part of this is the Communication Systems Northwest contract that you guys approved on December 12th. There's also, we also have in our maintenance and operations on-call support for the current system. And so as we've been bringing these components online, if there's been any trouble with them, it's kind of a, I guess, an open conversation of, is this part of the capital project or is this something they've already installed and is working, but now we need them to come in and troubleshoot because it's not working the way we need it to work or something goes haywire. So we have a line item within our budget for on-call troubleshooting, which we have in both water and sewer. So we want to include that because that was also paid to Communication Systems Northwest. And then Global, our third-party IT provider, we authorized, they replaced and put in a new firewall to kind of separate the SCADA system from the city system. So that now to go from the city's network to the SCADA network requires going through 2 firewalls, 1 on each side. They replaced the server. They also helped with the process of converting the SCADA communications to the private cellular network. And then they've also they've been on call for Communication Systems Northwest to help them integrate SCADA within our existing IT infrastructure and communications. So there's been a number of components where they've been involved in that. And so that was a separate contract. So we wanted to reflect all of that so you guys could see we're going to spend just under $500,000 in total on this project. Most of that has been, which makes sense because there are more monitoring functions and sites for our water system and sewer. You have to monitor things like water quality and chlorine, which we don't really care how much chlorine's in the sewer or what the quality of the sewer is. The Gresham measure that when it runs into their treatment facility. So here's a breakdown of that project. And I wanted to kind of put that in front of you guys because it has been a big project. It's been 2.5 years since we started this and it's just now wrapping up. And this should be the final kind of time you'll see this in front of you. So I wanted to pause here and ask if you guys had any questions about the SCADA project, any of the components, any of the reasons for the changes. I know that for some of you, this project has had a longer tenure than you've had on council. So I wanted to kind of pause here and see how everyone was doing.
No, you've kept us up on this, or John has kept us up on it, and I'm very satisfied with what been shared with us, so.
I'm satisfied with what's been shared. I just, because we haven't talked about it, for a long time, how often do we go through one of these large projects like this?
So one of the things that's going to come out of this, one of the kind of the final handoff items that we're going to get from Communication Systems Northwest is we're going to sit down with them and Global IT and have kind of a memorandum of understanding of who is maintaining which parts of the system. So Global will be maintaining some of the hardware that they bought and installed, but the programming and the brains of the operation needs to be managed by Communication Systems Northwest. Part of that has also been, as they've been going through our sites and replacing them, the things that they touched and replaced, we will have acquisition costs, dates, and kind of expected useful life. And then we'll also review everything that they chose not to replace because it was in good enough condition that it didn't warrant replacement, and talk about how much those would have cost to replace and how much longer we can expect to have them. And so we anticipate being able to build a full kind of replacement sinking fund for the SCADA system with all of the components and start treating that like we treat this building, which is something that we put money away for every year. I know when we initially talked about this project, we talked about how we knew and had budgeted for a year, almost multiple decades, $30,000 a year in SCADA capital replacement in both in the water and sewer funds. And how over the last 10 years before we started this project, we hadn't really used a lot of that because of some difficulties we had getting concrete projects and really getting the eyes and expertise on it that we needed to do a kind of a comprehensive review of our capital. So I would anticipate that this is something that we will continue to do. And we're not quite sure how much we're going to put into the budget to transfer from water and sewer to the sinking fund to basically prepay the cost for replacing the system when it needs replacement in the future. Our hope is that we won't ever have to come and do cash finance a $500,000 project, that now that we have, and part of the issue that we had with the SCADA system before was getting the information of what components were replaced and what their useful life was a challenge because the vendor at the time liked to buy parts used that weren't always. So we knew when we paid for things and when they were replaced, but whether that was the full value of a replacement cost and how much useful life was still left on the components was challenging. But I anticipate that you'll see in this next year's budget, some money being transferred from water and sewer to kind of put money away based on a comprehensive schedule of when we think we're actually gonna have to do this again. Yeah.
If I added up in my head what it costs us per month, we're spending between $60,000 and $80,000 a year to maintain the SCADA system in previous years. Just looking in my head.
Yeah.
So
Yes. How much did you say?
$60,000 to $80,000 a year just to maintain it.
Yeah.
In the old way. So I don't know if you're going to have a contract now with CS.
We do, it's more of an on-call basis. So with our previous provider, he was the only one with access to the data to do all the reports. And he was pretty much the only one who knew how anything operated or could fix it. So that's why we had a monthly invoice from him
Right.
considerably. So with CSNW, we have full access to the data. The reports are automated and we can go pull them at any time. And so our contract with them is just on an on-call basis. If we run into an issue, then they'll come out and bill us for the time.
But
Can I follow up with another question, please? The MOU, Seth, that you talked about, is that MOU in process? does Global IT and Communication Systems Northwest already know what that MOU is going to be? Is that going to have to be negotiated? Or are we at a point where clear understanding of an MOU has been in this in the entire project right along?
So they have been working together through this entire project. What we just need to finalize with them is who's going to maintain what. But pretty much they have full contact information for each other. So if one runs into an issue that, in fact, they're both here today working on finalizing stuff. There's a lot of programming involved and a lot of IT pieces. So CSNW does the programming side, but the access and stuff through the firewall and configuration, that's all on Global's side. So we're gonna just finalize, and mainly it's so that Global doesn't do any updates or anything to the server that would impact our SCADA software. But yeah, they've been working together. They know how to contact each other if they run into issues. So I don't see that as an
And really,
problem.
Mr. Mayor, the reason why we're wanting that is we want to, I think everyone has a general understanding, but we want to get down in writing and have everyone look at what the responsibilities are and where that lies, and kind of sit together and all nod our heads that, yes, we all think that this is the way we should move forward, so that in the case something goes where we need to do a repair or we need to do some recovery, it's very clear who's responsible for what part of that and who's supposed to be maintaining what backups.
And right now it
Yeah.
should be under
And I-
warranty for at least a year.
The hardware, most of
the hardware, I think, has a pretty good warranty.
and the programming, I believe if there's anything that's wrong with it, they'll come back in and fix. And that's, I don't know if I consider that a
It-
warranty, but
I think if they did something wrong with it, yes.
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
think that
Go
the
ahead.
MO, that memorandum of understanding is critical, in my opinion, and it's certainly everybody needs to be on the same page as who's paying for what 3 years from now or 5 years from now. Because as we all know, personnel changes with these organizations, just like they do cities. And it needs to be in writing and not, not assumed, certainly.
I don't know if I missed this part. What's the pending dollar amounts?
So the project is not quite finalized. There is a portion balance remaining on the contract for the work that they're actually out here doing today and tomorrow. But there's also an additional part of the on-call that's actually for the partial flume. It was a recommended replacement of an older piece of equipment that we were going to wait on, but then the ice storm killed it. So that was kind of an add. And then the global portion is because they're putting in another access point so that from here at City Hall, we can have full access and control of the SCADA system. And so that's the piece that Global has to set up through the firewall. So that's why they're both out here working today. So that's what the pending is for. It should be wrapped up by the end of this week.
Okay,
For
and
the-
so they
for the-
projected that, or is that?
Yes, so the CSNW, I had pretty solid numbers on the projection. The Global, not so much. So that's probably a little high, but just wanted to make sure it was covered.
Gotcha.
all right. Is everyone okay on SCADA?
Further questions?
I'll move on to some housekeeping items. These are things we wouldn't normally run a supplemental budget for. They kind of fall within existing appropriations or existing projects. But since we're doing this, we wanted to highlight them so we can be transparent and get them kind of in the books. So the first one, general fund. We did an installation of the disc golf course, and we also did a futsal feasibility study. So those were two things that I think came out of the Parks Advisory meeting. That one was an actual project and one was looking at futsal. For public safety, BOAC dispatch, They are projected to go over their budget this year, and they had to ask for a supplemental budget as the city of Portland. We pay a proportionate share of that cost, and the reason why that went up from what we budgeted is they started out this fiscal year with about a 25% vacancy rate in their dispatchers. And so that was an issue that started in 2020, and they've been running that deficit for a number of years because it takes 12 to 18 months to actually train and get someone on the floor and actually start being able to answer 911 calls by themselves. Good news is that they're almost at full staffing. The bad news is that their personnel costs have ramped up 25 to 30% over what they were last year. And we didn't budget that high. So we need to pull a little bit more money in. And that was numbers that they released to us probably 2 months ago, letting us know that that was their projection for us for the next year. And then Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, I think we had budgeted 517,000. We bumped that up 20 because we found out after we did the city manager's proposed budget last year that their rate increase wasn't going to be 4%, it was going to be 10%. We didn't get that notice until after we had already built the budget. So it's something that would normally try and fit in within other savings, but since we're here coming to you, we're just going to appropriate and true that up. And then finally, there's an increase in cost for the south sign. I believe when Greg came and presented on the signs at the February 27th meeting, he had the cost at $80,000. In the budget, we had put that cost at 60, somewhere between when we were doing the design work that didn't get accurately reflected in the budget. And so we needed to bump that up in order to meet what we believe is going to be the construction cost for that. So those are the general fund items. Do you have any questions on anyone in particular?
No.
Questions? Mayor, any questions?
No questions here.
Okay, then on to our utilities. We are in our water, we're buying some smart meters. We have been paying the same cost for the last 2 or 3 years, which we've been budgeting, which has been about 8,500. We were going to double buy an order this year, but the cost increased from 8,500 to just over 10,000. So the increased cost is reflected here. We bought a new chlorine analyzer, which is a piece of equipment that measures chlorine. And then seismic evaluation. This was something that wasn't budgeted, but we had a project for building some ramps and ladders in one of our reservoirs. And when they were out doing kind of a more thorough inspection, noticed some foundation issues that we wanted to get checked out as soon as we could. So that was an expense that was authorized to move forward, since when you have some visible cracking in your foundation, it's concerning and you want to get on top of it right away. We don't have the final report back from that, but should have that back next, hopefully, month or two. And then for sewer, Shea Lift pump repair and replacement, $28,000. I believe that's for 2 pumps. The nice thing about this is we know that we can get some reimbursement for one of them going out or through insurance, because I think both of these went out in the ice storm. Is that correct?
One of them went out.
One of them went out in the ice storm. Okay. So we submitted for reimbursement for insurance, and then the county also met the threshold for the ice storm for be able to get a reimbursement from FEMA. We don't know how much money or on what time frame those things will kind of percolate through. But $28,000 is the total cost. We believe that some of those funds will be captured back either through FEMA or through insurance reimbursement. And then finally, we had our generators serviced, and for the Shea generator, there was an additional service that happens once every 6 years to replace and redo the cooling system for that. So since they were out doing it and it was flagged, we had them do it rather than wait and hope that we get through till the next budget cycle. So those are the housekeeping items for water and sewer. That's all of what we have included and what we published for in the publication notice for the supplemental budget. I'm available to entertain any other questions or council discussion.
Yeah, you should ask for public testimony.
Is there any public testimony?
Not received any.
Being none, we'll hand it over to council questions and discussion. We'll close the public hearing and move to council session.
I move to approve resolution 06-2024, a resolution authorizing the appropriation of contingency and making supplemental appropriations to the funds.
I'll second that.
Have a first and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries. We'll jump over to resolution 7-2024 sewer CCTV and cleaning project award.
What was that? Sorry.
What was that?
I'm teasing him about how long that title was.
Okay, we can read it. No.
Yeah. Look on your
Put
face.
it in.
Gonna be looking up the sewer pipe.
All right,
Good stuff.
Council President, councilors. So we're coming to you with the resolution 7-2024 for the sewer CCTV and cleaning. So last year, we actually came to you with actually the same number, resolution 7-2023 for the same project, which actually fell through when we were trying to finalize the contracts. The contractor who was approved for that stated that they could not complete the project within the budget. So here we are coming to you again. So to kind of recap, the last full sewer cleaning and camera that we did was in 2017, which produced many binders and many CDs. So we're looking to actually upgrade and get USB drives and some more accurate information. And then we're coming to you just for the council approval since it's over $50,000. And this will be coming out of the sewer fund capital outlay. So originally, the budget for this was 200,000, which is still similar this year. And like I said, last year, we actually went out for RFP bids. Two companies, so Alpha Environmental and then Iron Horse bid on those. And originally, this was given to Alpha Environmental. Their bid came in at 196,740. And then Iron Horse was at almost $1 million. So they were well over. And then in this time, since Alpha kind of pulled out, we actually we've had specific areas that we've had Levitt come out to do work for us, just for some camera work and some cleaning. And during this work, they actually proposed to us that they do the work for our whole sewer system for 136,800, and their proposal is actually for the next year. So start next month. If we were to go through with this, we would do 1 week a month for up to 12 months or shorter if it actually became shorter. And through that, we would actually get GPS of all of our laterals, which we do not have right now. So we would be able to put that in our mapping system, which would help us during locates and just customer service for our citizens. And so we are looking to get this approved to not exceed $150,000, which is under that original $200,000 budget we had. So this supports 3 of our city goals. So goal number 1, a safe, clean, inclusive community with a sense of pride and strong identity. Goal 3, high quality, cost effective public utilities, parks and events. And then goal 7, responsible environmental leadership. Any questions?
Why is there such a significant difference in like the proposal compared to the other proposals in the past year? I'm just curious as far as.
That
That's
is a
like
great
70,000.
question.
I can answer because I was kind of here when they did that. So because they were going to come out and do it all at once, so it was more of they essentially had to shut down their business and come out here for several weeks and do all the work. That's why Lovett's proposal is a little different. And then the one from Iron Horse, we never really did understand because they were the ones that had done the work for us previously and for a pretty reasonable cost. But it's kind of seemed in both cases, they'd kind of gotten away from that size of a project and we would have been paying to kind of rebuild their infrastructure for it.
Several of it, things will come into play is that distance that they travel, they may need to purchase more equipment. And so
Yep.
they're looking for somebody to pay for that.
Yep.
And so they just overbid it. Maybe the other part is maybe they didn't really want the job.
And I think they wanted additional equipment.
Yeah.
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 If
Question?
if I understand this correctly, Eric, as I read the staff report, signing on to a year-long contract with them to come out as needed, I guess, for once a month, is that's approximately a savings as opposed to just paying them monthly. Is that right? I
So
may
we
not
were-
be reading.
We could have done a month, like a month to month, but going this route, it's more of a service agreement that we'll just chip off. So it could have been 11,400 a month, but it's hard to say how much lineage we'd actually get each week. Some weeks might be a little less, some weeks might be a little more, just depending on if there's issues in the lines or not. So with talking with Levitt, we decided that it'd probably be best to just do an overall for the project and then just chip away. It'd basically be the same amount every month, no matter how far we got in the system.
But they're still
Yeah.
going to do the entire system, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're
Yep,
still going to get the same quality and quantity.
exactly.
Yeah.
Better quality.
It seems
Because
to
it has
that does,
GPS.
not only is it a savings, it seems to make sense on for both parties, for Lovett as well as for our billing.
You were
And-
saying, Becky?
Yeah, this proposal includes GPSing the laterals. That wasn't in the previous proposals.
Oh, wow.
So it'll be better data.
Wow.
When you
Just
say
take us longer.
GPS laterals.
Yeah. So that's
What?
the service lines from people's houses.
Yeah.
If they find anything there that's maybe blocking.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
We would know
Wow.
where all of them tie into our sewer mains now.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, right?
That's a
It
very
seems
big.
like it.
And if we come to say your house, we can tell where your clean out is from your house, but to know where it actually connects into the sewer line, we don't have those records. So now we would be gaining those records.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. Wow.
And I would know before you guys approve this is that this would be a direct award to Lovett. We did go through a competitive RFP process, I think 12 months ago. It was
A year ago.
a year ago. So we've satisfied the spirit of the public procurement and competitive process. This is really the only firm that we did, and we direct solicited Lovett the first time around. They just declined to bid. So it's this would be a direct placement without reopening that RFP process.
Wow.
That was one of my questions, why didn't Levitt bid the first?
And I think the difference is when we put the project out for bid, it was come do all the work at once. And this that they came up with is we'll dedicate a week, a month to this project over the course of a year. And we could have just hired them each month to go do a section of the city. And the amounts would have all been well under the authorization, but since we're kind of proposing to get the whole city sewer line done under this, that's why we brought it to you with the full proposal amount.
I can see advantages everywhere. For them, they're local. The
Yeah.
other part is they can send out trainees
Yeah.
along with seasoned people and really up their game
Yeah.
I mean,
tremendously.
we basically right-size the project for them.
Well, I think that it fits operationally. It's much easier to do it
Yes.
this way. One of the things we were scratching our head about is we did contract with Lovett last year to scope a stormwater line, and the cost per foot was very reasonable. And so we kind of asked the question, well, you're sending a camera down a pipe. Why can't you send it down a sewer pipe instead of a stormwater pipe and charge us the same amount? And that was kind of where the conversation really got started of how do we make this work for what we need and how do we make it fit? It's kind of similar to the crack and slurry seal. We're not large enough for someone to stop and put us priority. We tell our vendor, get us in when it's convenient for you so that we can continue to have that relationship. It was kind of the same way with Lovett of what's convenient for you and what's going to work for you rather than saying, come and do this project in this block of time. And if you don't, there are penalties.
So one other thing, they can use this to their advantage if they go to replace a sewer line in Wood Village on a customer, then they've got that data for
Yep.
themselves.
Previously with the other bidder, what was the timeline on the project?
I don't know what was in the actual initial RFP because John and Kyler handled that. But I imagine that it probably had get it done in a month or two would be my
Yeah.
guess.
We wanted it to be done last summer. So the bid was, I think the bid award process was April, May of last year. And the idea would have been to get done during the dry months.
But we're still going to keep records though of them. They're going to film this for us, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so none of this while we did this and whether or not it got done or not, you're still going to have film to prove of it and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Then I'm very happy.
Everything will be on a flash drive or now
Not
they've
the
been
one that they
moving.
lost, but no, I get it. I'm teasing.
I think they have YouTube links too that they send that we can look at as well.
Okay,
That's funny.
they can
When
put
you
them up
said
on there
USB, I was like, dang, we're the
for the,
floppy
for the
disk
big,
and
for
what-
the tree branches, right? For tree branch roots in there and stuff.
Exactly. Hopefully we don't have many of those.
Yeah, you can find them on YouTube.
Any further questions or discussion? Entertain a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 7-2024, authorizing the city manager to award the sewer CTV and cleaning project to Lovett Services not to exceed $150,000.
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Now we'll go to discussion of park programming and fees.
This was interesting.
Everybody loves parks. Parks is what people want to talk about. As evidenced by the number of applications we got for the Parks Commission versus the number we got for the Budget Committee. Council President, councilors. Before you tonight, you have a staff report prepared by Caroline Hinders, our management analyst, that was answering a question that was asked back in February from you all, which was facility use. So at your last meeting, I brought you what had been going on with City Hall, the interior of our facility here, Donald Robertson Park. This is talking about the outside amenities and what usage we've had up until this point. So that's why you're getting this informational update. So good news, we had some rentals of the outside. Bad news, we only had two since in the last two calendar years. We have a very generous reservation system. Any event under 100 people is free. Over 100 people, it's just a flat fee, and then we do charge for commercial usage. We didn't get any commercial usage. It's not something we really pushed for. But this hasn't really been a huge revenue driver for the city up until this point. So we took a look at who'd been utilizing the park through the system. And the biggest user of the park system is Play East. So you can see here, blank full activity offered by Play East. It was just, we were missing some of the information from the permit. But in general, you can see that Play East runs classes, summer lunch program, and soccer, as well as a couple of events. And that will drive most of their usage. The other usage, we had a Zumba class. Birthday parties are very popular outside as well as they're inside the facility. A football club, I had to pronounce that in management team, and I was ridiculed for my bad accent. So
What did you say?
football.
It's supposed to be.
That's what.
Question. Oh, well. The question is, or the spelling is.
That's how it showed up on the permits, though.
I
That's
don't
how it's
think
being
there's
reflected
two
here.
capitals, man.
Football.
And then the other uses was
Capital B.
different parties, graduation parties, celebrations, retirements, and then ceremonies, which celebration of life, weddings, and we had one elopement. It was clearly written on the permit that it was an elopement, not a wedding. So that's what constitutes the other usage. Now, usage by facility. See if I can hide this. There we go. Usage by facilities. So the biggest usage was the fields, and then the picnic shelter and the gazebo. So for the fields, Play East, football, parties, there were a couple of usages of parties. For the picnic shelter, that place was again the biggest user, with birthday parties running a close second. And then for the gazebo, the Zumba class was the primary user. And again, parties and ceremonies were pretty much all that went there. So now this doesn't reflect all of the usage on the field. We have, if nobody's reserved it, it's available for people to come. So we had an ROTC group that would come out and do their exercises here. They didn't pull a permit. Various soccer, we had some baseball, but none of those were required to get a permit, and they were obviously not over 100 people. So it's not something that we required them to get. If they didn't want to reserve it, they're not required to. Most of the usage you see at Donald Robs, if you're playing fetch with your children in the grassy field with a Frisbee, that is also not required a permit. I was told I was not able to say dogs, but that playing fetch with children was acceptable use of the field. This shows you what we have captured in the permit system, what we know of the field, what we know of the usage of the system. So that's kind of the census informational part of it. We also wanted to put some things forward for you guys as input and direction to us as staff. I think the first two questions that we have in front of you are, do we want to have more usage of the park facilities? And if so, who and what type are we going to try and target? And so this was some of the issues that were highlighted in the staff report, and we've also discussed in management team of what the potential pros and cons of increasing or prioritizing different usage. So one of the ones we talked about is one of the nice things about offering, so we didn't collect a lot of money, which is not good. But one of the nice things is when people are offered a service for free, they do not have unrealistic expectations of what they're going to be getting. So even with some of the free reservations, we've gotten feedback from people of, if somebody's on the field that they've reserved, them wanting to have them removed or, have some staff out there to police the area, make sure that people stay out. We don't charge them money. We can say, well, it's an open park. You have first right of that space, but we're not providing staff to you for your event. And that's easy to say. Versus if you are paying for it, then there's more of an expectation that the city will not only protect that, but do some messaging that it will be, if it's free, you got to do your own cleanup. And if the lines aren't in or the bases aren't there, then you got to deal with it. When you start paying, then it creates that expectation of service that we don't currently have a staffing model for. One of them is, we have this beautiful field out here. Some people chop it up into 6 or 7 fields when they use it. Some people wanted to use the whole thing, and we parameters on exactly what part of the field are you reserving and renting. Time. Currently, if you fill out one of these park permits, you can ask for it all day. I have yet to see a kid's birthday party go 14 hours on a weekend. I don't know who would do that to themselves, but that's the time they reserve it. So there's a question of, could you, if we are seeing an increase in demand and utilization, would it be possible to run 3 birthday parties on the same day if they each got 4 hours at different time slots? So we currently they're not paying for it. So when they ask how long they want it, they can ask all day, and there's really no reason not to. Community. So unlike the discussion that we had around this facility, we currently don't distinguish between residents and non-residents for people who want to use it. It's the only distinction is if you are commercial and if your event's more than 100 people. That's neither right nor wrong. It's just different than what we've had conversations about for the use of this building. And it's something, if we wanted to change, we could change in the future. Another one that comes up now that we're getting more programming is, do we do a system like the state where they take reservations for the entire year starting at a certain point? Or do we take smaller chunks of time to reserve, like, let's say, half a year or quarterly? The advantage to doing a full year is that you only have one sign up period and people can plan their events out. The problem is that, if we open up a calendar year in September, especially if we have groups that we have partnerships with, we're asking them to know in September of, say, 2024, what the demands in November of 2025 are going to be and when they're going to need to use it. And it's not common that people are planning more than a year out for what their space reservations are going to be needed. So when you have that longer period, people tend to ask for more than they need because there's a level of uncertainty and risk there. And then maintenance costs. So my job before I came here was working for the Park District on the west side, where they managed, I think, 250 to 300 fields, both for themselves and for Beaverton School District. There's no money in renting fields. If you do if you could break even on mowing, that's great. But other than that, this is not a moneymaker. This is, for example, we've been making investments into our field here. And that our budget for next year for that is going to be $35,000. And that's going to be 2 treatments twice a year, both aerating, top dressing, fertilizing, and then we do the mowing. When you start generating a lot more usage, especially sports usage, you start chewing up the field. You start creating divots, potholes. You can see where they've been practicing, where the line of scrimmage has been on the field. And then you need to go back in and put more time, effort, and money into the field to keep it in shape. And so that's the downside with increasing usage. and driving that demand is that you also need to, drive costs for continuing to maintain it in that air, that the condition to which it we become accustomed. So, and really there's, you can do some surveys, from area providers for practice fields, paying between $5 and $15 is relatively common, but, and you could, if you're doing a really large facility with turf fields and lights, you can charge, and bleachers, you can charge $50 to $100 an hour, up maybe upwards of 200 if it's a private tournament. But even then, it's not, you would have to be doing that as kind of a full-time business to actually make it pencil. There, any public use on that facility would all be programmed and kind of whoever can pay uses it. So, and it takes a lot of $10 field rentals to pay for $35,000 of twice a year treatment on the field. I mean, you're talking, you need to have 3,500 hours of field use, and that's a lot to get out of a grass field in the Pacific Northwest with no lights. I mean, that's just kind of the reality. And that's just the contracting. That doesn't include the mowing and the maintenance that we do internally with our groundskeeper. So those are the issues that we kind of talked about at a staff level of things that we wanted to bring to council to have you guys kind of mull over, look at, and get some feedback from you on those. Here's a sketch that Caroline put together of kind of how you could segment out the field. Makes sense to me, but we're always open to doing things a little bit differently. And then in the staff report, we kind of proffered two options for you guys to consider if you do want to move in the direction of driving more usage in the park. And by usage, I want to make clear that that is monitored usage. So that would be things that people have to permit for. Again, as I've said, we get a lot of usage out of the park. You know, I think there was 130 some permits. We've had a lot more than 130 days worth of use in the last 2 years of the park. Most of that is people just essentially walk in, use the gazebo, use the picnic shelter, don't reserve it, use the barbecue, use the tables that we've been investing in, go play in the field. It's, the park has not really been, up to this point, been designed as a registration system. It's a park, you come use it. And if you don't talk to anybody, you don't have to get permission or check in with anyone to do that. So we brought two kind of pathways to go forward, and these can be mixed and matched, or you can kind of pick what you like out of these. But we wanted to put together some more concrete proposals for you guys to kind of think about. The first one is kind of our existing, the way we're doing things, plus a little bit extra. So it would be splitting up the field into reservable chunks, continue to prioritize play east usage since they're our recreation partner and affiliate. The idea was to have open up reservations on the first field section, which is the one right next to the building, which tends to see, just anecdotally from staff, tends to see the most programmed usage that isn't permitted. People just kind of, if they pull up and they want to do a soccer practice, they throw some goals out there and they do that. And that's the closest to the parking. That's what they get to use the most. So we could just say, you can't reserve field one. Field one is just kind of for people who want to use the park and have some green space. We would keep the same fee structure. We talked about leagues and tournaments because we've gotten a little bit more inquiries on this. There's a lot of different ways you can do leagues and tournaments. Where we landed as staff was doing those with people who you've built longstanding relations with is the most sustainable way to get additional usage for leagues and tournaments. Because you bring someone in and you teach them about your field, what's allowed, what's not. If you have a bunch of people that are one-offs, it takes a lot more time to manage, educate, and then they may or may not stick around. Where if you have a league or an affiliate going through kind of a process of being an affiliate or being a partner or kind of a known quantity, then you can kind of talk to them about what the level of expectations are for what they're getting, what they're going to be doing with the field, kind of how, if there's going to be anything that we ask of them. I think that example would be, we had someone wanting to do some diamond sports and in the past, and they've put some maintenance and done some work in that. And they've also kind of understood that we don't have staff to go out there and grade the infield and put up lines and swap out bases. And if we'll give them if they want to put a locker out there with a key on it, that'll work, but that's about as much as we're willing. So that was kind of one of the ideas. We're just having leagues and tournaments for people that we have a longstanding relationship with and are known to kind of minimize the amount of education and re-education you have to do for that. And also to mitigate if you have a longstanding relationship with someone and they come in and chew up the field, then you talk with them about kind of how to do that so that it doesn't impact the use of others for the park. Councilor Men, did you have a question?
I'm confused about it because
Sure.
to clarify, or maybe if I repeat back what I think I heard. So like, if you already have a long-standing relationship with a league, we give them priority, but how would we build long-standing relationships? You know what I mean?
So it would be kind of the idea that if somebody wants to start running a league on our field, or if they want to do a recurring tournament, then they would need to go through the process of becoming an affiliate.
I see. Okay.
And that would kind of make them fill out some paperwork. It's not just going to be, hey, there's this group from Hillsborough that needs some space. They want to do a tournament. They're going to come in. We may or may not see them again. Those are the ones that are a little harder to do. It's kind of more of a local focused, and generally you only allow tournaments for organizations that also have a league or already have a presence, because those are the ones that come in and are really high demand intensive use. And then both in terms of trash, usage in the park, parking, that type of thing. And so you would prioritize that for, different areas, do it a different ways. I've seen some where if you want to do a league, you have to have 50 to 66% to 75% of the people who are participating in the league as residents within the city. That's not really something we want to go out and start policing. Or like tournaments, same thing. If you want to have a tiered rate, this is a rabbit hole that you can spend a lot of time down. And this kind of simplifies it for staff. And then when it's not programmed, it's open use for whoever wants to do it.
Can I ask a question here? And when I talk, I can't tell if somebody else is talking. So if I'm interrupting somebody, I apologize.
Go for
Am I
it.
good?
You're
All right.
good.
We're really getting down into the weeds of play, so to speak, of uses and approaches and that. My questions are more broad, Seth. Do we have problems right now? And if so, briefly, what are those problems with it that we could act on to make it better for our residents and access to the field and for staff? Is there any problems here we should be hearing about with the use of the fields?
I don't really think we have any problems per se. This kind of came up more from council when we were discussing programming the park. The only, I think, real question that we've had, we did have an applicant who submitted, I don't know if it was, I guess it was for soccer, that wanted like all the days and evenings of the park. So that application's still kind of sitting on Greg's desk while we figure out how to handle that. So kind of more the part of council's decision. Do we want to focus more on leaving stuff open for the community? Or do we want to try to make, let somebody reserve all the
Thank you.
evenings?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Becky, because that's where my head is right now, is that in general, I think our priority should be access to the parks for our residents and access to the parks for the organizations that support our residents and support our communities. So, since you said it, there isn't money to be made in creating somewhat a fee schedule that starts carving up what's $10 going to cost and what is going to be free. So, first off, I think whatever we discuss tonight, I think our priority are our residents and taxes they're paying and opportunities for our families and communities here. The second thing is just what you've said. I don't think we should be in the business of trying to make money off our either one of our facilities. I think we should be, however, paying attention to wear and tear on our facilities and supplementing it as reasonably as we can to try to maintain it. But again, we're never going to collect enough money to build a new field. That's all going to have to be done through capital and grants and that sort. So all of this is good for us to think about, but that's certainly where my head is when I read this, detailed report about the discussion. So that's where, and I'd like to hear what other people have to say. And I think with let me just go back to that, the picture, the 5 fields. If that's something that staff thinks would be create more access, more opportunities for people to have a reserved spot, then, I think that would be a good idea. I don't know how you're going to have to mark out the fields in some fashion. And as far as, the issue maybe with folks coming in and somebody has a reserve part of the field, and then other folks just are coming in and encroaching and they're trying to hold a soccer practice for 6 and 7-year-olds. That seems like it'd be our responsibility to put the right signage in the park that clearly states that there are some fields that are reserved. If you want one, you go through this, and the person that reserves it, they have a receipt that says it's reserved for these days, for this time, and we may already be doing that. But again, my mind is around how to make this accessible, fair, and available for our folks, first and foremost, our organizations that support us, and then open it up in a reasonable way.
I kind of agree. I agree with you, Mayor. When we had our Thanksgiving drive and how it was supposed to be targeted for our community, and not much of our community really benefited from that. And we kind of have to think outside of that, and what other amenities can we really offer to our community that is limited just to our community? And this is it. And we do have a great recreational space that we should keep just for our community and more exclusive, because we have control over that a little bit more.
I agree. I strongly dislike option 2, strongly, especially, Play East is like, I'm not just saying this because you're sitting next to me, but it's such an important resource in our community, and to deprioritize it just seems that just none of that on that list made much sense to me. And I completely agree that, keeping the same fee structure and open when not programmed, that just makes more sense. And I think it aligns with our values more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I kind of look at it like this: until someone comes and wants to build something, then we just leave it as status quo.
I mean, I do have a little more insight to what Becky was mentioning, and I think, there isn't a huge problem yet. But I think where some discussion was had was having something in place that could help mitigate future problems was the idea. So I mean, I do see the kind of the benefit of having something outlined that the city can kind of fall back as a policy to say, oh, okay, well, here's this is kind of what we
Well,
do.
Plan B.
Well, kind of just, just foreseen, as this park continues to grow more and more in usage. Not that we'll get this huge inflush of everyone wanting to be here, but again, when we start having,
Complex.
people seeing, oh, well, the park, you don't have to pay to use the park, and then people just flag out here.
Flood it.
So I mean, so I do see the benefit of having at least something. Does it have to go well in depth to what, like, maybe TRHP does? Probably not yet. But at least a little something, right? And I, obviously because we want to protect the gem we have for our residents.
Yeah.
But we also have to understand, this park is for our residents, but so many people from outside
Oh,
our
Yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
We haven't gotten in the situation yet, but especially with the field configuration, if we have somebody who wants to use the diamond and the sport, kind of for baseball or softball.
Cottage with a rich history.
But at the same time, that overlaps with, say, a field sport like soccer. Sorry. Like who gets priority we haven't had a lot of people wanting to use the same space at the same time. But as it gets more usage, we're trying to get out ahead of how do we manage that and how do we make sure that we're being fair and equitable? Because the easiest way to drive more usage is to program, is to put leagues and, practices and games. But at the same time, then you're taking a resource that would be open to the general public and kind of limiting it. So, and if you don't have a fee structure, a lot of the reason why most of these places have fees is not necessarily to make money, it's to make people not over-reserved.
Overextend their stay.
Overextend, yeah.
Oh, good
In,
point.
in that case, is there some kind of a happy medium? Like it seemed, maybe because I'm very literal in some ways that it just went 1 and 2, but like, yeah, I guess when I consider it, like a new fee structure could be, $10 for, or like a small, like, I guess kind of a service fee, but that we wouldn't have to limit it in other ways. Like maybe there's some kind of matrix we could use, or like if someone wants to use every day, all day, well, then, you're limiting the use of the park for other people. So here is the fee for that,
Are they going to come back though and say, does Play East pay?
Place doesn't need to pay.
And that's where having a formal makes sense because
Because it's government funded.
there's enough public benefit
Right.
and it's not exclusive for
I'm just
private
bringing
usage.
that out right into the open. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then again, as a city,
I knew the answer.
we
I'm
can,
just saying.
we can say,
Rhetorical
reservations can
Rhetorical
happen
question.
through
Thank you.
season A,
Rhetorical question.
which is like, the spring season.
Oh,
Summer is more, open, and then we're due season B, which is the fall season. Obviously, we wouldn't want people during the winter months reserving and tearing up the field. But kind of, pre-planning of maybe where that
Those
would
seasons would be,
happen.
yeah.
That makes
Looking,
sense.
looking at more of, the programming aspect of,
So are we talking more of the field here as opposed to the other facilities?
Well,
That kind of,
because we can do it for all the facility, the picnic shelter, gazebo and fields that are kind of distinct permits. We can have like seasons where, from January through April, cut it up into 3 parts and say we're taking reservations for January 1st on October 15th. And then we would contact Play East or any affiliate that we would use that at that time and say, we're opening this up to the general public on October 15th. You need to have your requests in October 1st so that then we can have enough time to let people know when they call what's actually been reserved for kind of these priority programs. And we can do that. And that's a different way of kind of prioritizing without fees. And if that's something the council wants us to explore doing, we're more than happy to do that.
In
couple
my
more-
opinion, I would lean more just towards the field, just because again, like, you know, the picnic shelter, again, we are one of the only ones that don't require, I mean, you can reserve it, but you know, if you're looking at other parks, you know, you have to reserve them, right? And so
Yeah.
this allows for someone just to, oh, well, no one's using it, we're gonna come in and
And
that nature.
we can bring you back a more concrete proposal for what that might look like for the different facilities based on what we think is going to make the most sense. But we also wanted to make sure to get feedback from you, you know, the time thing. We might end up doing something like for the picnic shelter and gazebo. If you want a 4-hour block, we'll ask you to do a permit and that's free. If you want it all day, we'll probably make you pay something, not to get our costs, but just to make sure that you're not
Or
sitting on it.
Yeah.
You know, you're not coming in.
That makes sense.
And I think the map works out, right? Cause you staff can kind of make an assessment, say, okay, you know, field 3 can probably put, you know, we could put, you know, 50 people there. And
Yeah.
you know, they're like, oh, well, it's under 100 people, but we're gonna use 3 fields. Then you're like, well, you're probably not under 100. And so you can do some there.
I could see a Diamond Sport wanting to, instead of just, you know, if they're having practice, it's like a little league, like kid practice, it's like 2. If they want to actually run like an adult league or do something, they might want fields 1, 2, 4, and 5 because they want all of it. And at that point, then we might say, well, if you want to take up the whole space, then, and you don't want to share with anyone, then you're going to need to pay something. Like that might be a way to go. And we can take this back as staff and try and figure out the way that's going to be kind of balance, keeping it open, but also encouraging usage for people and what's going to be the least invasive and costly in terms of both staff time and cost to maintain. Because again, we want to direct those resources, not just to maintaining fields, but to maintaining the entire park.
What you just said, I agree with what you've said and what other counselors have said. It's like an option to reserve allows our residents to have access. So I'm not against reserving, and it seems like it's the option to reserve that we make sure our residents understand is available to them. The second thing, though, is where does our Parks Commission fit into this discussion?
Great question. I don't know. It's something that we could take kind of once we get, if you guys want us to, at the because there's not really anything breathing down our neck at this point for why. What we could do is take this same discussion with a little bit more fleshing out of some of these issues that we've heard from council and take that to the Parks Commission for feedback on kind of what they want and then have that come back to you as a formal recommendation from them with adopting some of these policies.
Well, Seth, I'm not necessarily saying this exact conversation, but I think they need to be involved in this, and we're not in a hurry, so involved in it. But what I think we're really looking for, and what I'd want from the Parks Commission, is certainly some principles, some conceptual principles about how we're going to handle our parks, and what are they comfortable with, and a discussion similar to this would help flesh that out. And then the staff needs to take those two conversations and then put together some recommendations in my mind.
Okay, we can do that, and I'll check in with Greg and I'm not sure when the next Parks Commission meeting is scheduled. or if
Whenever
it's
we
been
schedule it.
If it's been look, some time probably in April or May to bring them together when it makes sense and have this discussion, hopefully some other ones. I know that we've been doing a lot of work trying to get the CDBG project scope. And so it might make sense to kind of do that at one meeting. So
This is
think
an
we
important
have-
discussion. Yeah, real important discussion we're having, and I think it's deserves some time and certainly some some opinions and some consensus around it.
Okay. Well, then to summarize what I've heard, want to continue to keep it similar to the fee structure, do some things that make sense and kind of future proof it with the idea of keeping it open to people and not have it be more of a paid model or like taking it out of public usage. And then we as staff will put together a little bit more and run it past the Parks Commission at their next meeting. And then at that point, bring it back to you probably in late summer or fall to take a look at the final product. Does that capture what the sentiment?
Sounds good.
And that is what I need. And have anything else unless there are questions?
All right, thank you, Seth. We'll move on to Director of Public Works report.
I'm back end. I'm behind the scenes.
You're behind.
Erica.
Awesome.
The man at the desk.
All right. Council President, councilors. Becky leaves this to me. So we actually had quite a quiet month in February. We had some exciting things though, even though it was quiet. So we hired and filled our parks and facilities maintenance position. So our new employee, his name is Robbie. He actually started this last Wednesday, so on the 20th. So he is full on. And then at Shea Lift Station, we kind of brought this up earlier. So both pumps at Shea were replaced. Thankfully, we were able to get that done pretty quickly after the storm. And then we're actually adding on to, we're doing a little more than just the pumps, but that is what was finished in February. And then we did a city banner maintenance. So we actually were able to replace 26 banners around the city that were looking pretty ragged and worn out. So hopefully you guys have noticed that. Looks a little more fresh. And then at our well 3 site, we were able to camera our well, which has never done before. So we're waiting on those results and hopefully should get those within the next few weeks too. So our standard monthly water sampling was complete. And then the park restroom design project the design portion was finished in February. For our permits, 14 permits were issued, 26 inspections were completed. Under code compliance, we actually had 40 new cases, 34 of those were closed, and since the beginning of the year, we've had 78 cases. Within our water system, our consumption was a little over 12,000 or 12 million gallons. Get that right. Projection was about 10.5 million gallons. And so our water loss is at 13.88%, which actually is a little less than the end of last year. So we're still working on getting that down. And that is it. Yes.
On your well number 3, is the well still out for maintenance? Is you having it serviced?
It is still out. We're still waiting on the report from GSI on the well run that they did. And then we're waiting. Actually, at the moment, they're getting parts to kind of rebuild our motor at the well and then put everything together. It looks like we'll probably be doing some cleaning and bailing sediment from the bottom, but should be pretty easy. So by assuming mid-April, we should get results kind of what direction we're going with that. So
Should be back in service before the hot weather begins.
before the summertime, that is our goal.
Then we're-
That is what we're pushing for.
Yep, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay.
Yeah. Any,
Questions? I had one question on, in the staff report, you guys have some, development and building activities. Removing Walmart and the SCADA, those 4 businesses, are those going up at the,
at the byway?
yes,
So Two Amigos is Fish Forever and Sushi Ninja will all be at the byway.
the Grove Tech, where is that?
Grove Tech is actually off Halsey, kind of behind the Bottle Drop.
Okay.
Or not,
Beside it.
it's next, it's behind Best
Little
Western.
sleep.
Oh, okay, okay, got it.
Across the street.
Yep.
Well, there is a street going into the meat.
Little side road.
Mayor, any questions?
No questions from me.
All right, thank you.
What is Fish Forever?
Exotic
They're
fish?
gonna sell fish.
Like aquarium store?
Forever.
Oh,
Seem like an aquarium. It's, I don't know, the lady has a YouTube channel. It's very strange.
very
I
strange.
can't wait.
Has like shelves of. Is it fish or is it stuff for, I don't know.
Like stuff, like fish to eat?
No.
Like aquarium
That's
style.
sushi.
Yeah.
So that's why they're partnering together.
And it's going to be in the byway there?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm pretty pumped about an aquarium store.
yeah.
A
they're-
weird one at that.
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, from what
Maybe
I've
both.
seen of it, it seems like she's just gonna have shelves and fish you can buy. I don't know. It's,
I thought it was more exotic fish,
Intriguing.
but
Yeah.
no, like,
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, we will.
we'll see.
Pretty
Yeah.
pumped about the restaurants.
Yeah, yeah. Great, thank you.
thank you.
Move on to Director of Finance report.
Council President, councilors. Included in your packet is the finance report through February 28th. I don't have any specific comments on what was included in the report. Revenues are trending where they should be. Expenditures are all below where they should be, so no red flags there. With the adoption of the supplemental budget tonight, that should only help improve that and help clarify. And that'll be the supplemental budget will be reflected in your March report. I did have 2 items that I wanted to talk about. We presented the investment policies as a sample, investment policy sample. Our intention had been to bring that back tonight to have you approve that. In the course of going through the steps to do that, we realized that there was a requirement for you can have an investment policy without getting approval from anyone. If you want to buy securities that are more than 18 months, then the Oregon State Treasury has a advisory board that you need to submit the policy to and have them approve it. So their next meeting is at the end of April. And so we've submitted that for approval. We should hear back and have that back on your agenda either at the last May meeting or the first June meeting. So they'll just take a look at it and make sure we're not proposing to do anything crazy, which we're not. That's why you'll have to wait on that one. Is there's some additional process for approval that the state has, which we weren't aware of until we were doing all of our whereases and citing the Oregon revised statutes and figured that we now fell underneath that. So the other piece is building fee updates. Gresham has building up fees increases. They're going to be effective July 1st, 2024. And I just wanted to make you guys aware. I know that Councilor Clark and Councilor Rios Campos, you were here for the last time we did this back in 2022. We have to do a resolution. Then our building official from Gresham has to submit it to the building codes division. They then have a 45-day waiting period for people to comment. And then there would be an ordinance adoption. Our goal is to get you the resolution by the second meeting in April and the ordinance by your second meeting in June so that we can make sure that our fees are aligned. And most of the fees, the last time we brought this to you, there was a bunch of consolidation and Gresham did this whole package on solar. And it was a pretty big update. These are really just indexing the hourly charges that they have for plan review and kind of special inspections. So we are inquiring with Gresham and Building Codes Division as to whether or not we can update. Gresham updated their building fees on a schedule up through 2026, and we're not sure if they only had to submit that once or if they have to submit that every year. So we're going to clarify that. Ooh. Just missed the microphone. We know that we'll have to submit something, but we're not sure if it's going to be a 1 year or 3 year. So wanted to give you guys those updates. And that's all I have for your finance director's report. Questions?
So we're smoking less, drinking slightly
I saw
more,
that.
we're driving more, but we're staying in hotels less, and the revenue is 100% higher. Can you explain that?
100% higher on which,
On interest income.
well, the interest income, we budgeted that fairly conservatively.
Well, last year though was 420%. So maybe that's, I get it.
Well, if you'll notice, if you notice the monthly total, we were running $3,000 to $4,000 for all of 21, 22, and by the end of 22, 23, we were 30,000. So the interest rates shot up about as fast as they have since I think the Fed has been a thing. And to budget conservatively, we were not expecting that we would go from 0 to 5% inside of 13 to 14 months. That was not part of our plan, but we benefited. So we're not going to complain about it.
Got 38,000 this month alone.
No, it's
No
become
complaints, right?
it's become a bright spot in our revenue report.
Yeah, people are gonna have to start smoking more though.
I
Yeah,
agree.
Yeah, that's 8%, less than 8%.
well, we did
Getting quite-
inquire.
These sin taxes are just not working out.
Did inquire, one of the big things that happened when they passed Measure 110, there were a lot of things that happened that impact us. One of those things was that the state took a lot of marijuana tax revenue that had been distributed to the cities and redirected it to those treatment programs. And as part of the short session that the legislature had, they did that big change to Measure 110.
Okay.
We reached out to the League of Oregon Cities and asked, did it come up about, there were a lot of news stories about how the state was collecting all this money and only like 10 people called their hotline that they had spun up and they were sitting on a bunch of money. Was there any discussion about maybe putting that money to work rather than having the state sit on it and not spend it on services?
Everybody was sitting there smoking instead of calling.
It was,
I got you.
we need to change what we're smoking. Sure. The short answer is that there was not any discussions about making the cities whole as part of that conversation.
Right.
So we don't anticipate that we're going to get any more money from marijuana. And one of the things that the league and some other cities had pushed this last year was the state to lift the cap on local marijuana taxes. Right now it's 3%. And there hasn't been any movement or discussion or interest from the state on allowing cities to have that option, which is unfortunate.
No, it's all good.
Other than that, we're all good. Yeah, and drink more. So that's all I have. And I am not your city manager, but I'll stay up here because Greg included a report.
Any questions on it?
Yeah, before we move on, questions?
No, I read what you guys are doing. It's great.
And he included the draft APP from
Yeah.
that he had presented
Wonderful.
with a schedule and
Wow.
a highlight of what's happening, kind of taking everything that you'd put on the sticky note board and trying to synthesize it into something.
That's great.
So if you have any questions on that, please let us know and we'll make sure that it gets flagged for Greg when he gets back. We jokingly refer to him as doing a familiarization trip for future staff team building efforts.
Where is he at?
Can we all be included?
I believe
He's at Disney World.
Oh,
Yeah.
shocking.
There
Team building right now.
manager stuff, I was just gonna update you guys. The sheriff's office dropped in this morning to let us know there was an abandoned RV on Sandy. They were able to get the couple into either shelter or housing. So they suggested that we get it towed while it was abandoned before somebody else moved in. So that got done this afternoon. And the BioClean company, I think, is who we sent out the rapid response. They towed it and cleaned up the exterior of the area, and the sheriff's office was out there kind of noticing the rest of the campers along Sandy, so hopefully get some of them to clear out. We're still working with the county on what kind of barriers we can get up to prevent people from parking again. The meeting got rescheduled for next Monday. So we're just kind of hoping the side of the street stays clear until we can get something going.
So this is the street, but not the area that we've now taken responsibility for, right?
It's,
Different road.
It's
Yeah.
on Sandy.
it's down on Sandy.
Okay. All right.
Becky, let me push a little bit on that to see if we can get something. I know the county, Greg and I talked about that, but if we don't get something in place of that, there's going to be another RV there. So
Right.
maybe just even the folding, what you use on the road work.
Those
But,
A-frames.
Yeah, I say put it down there and do that while we wait for this meeting.
And
Put something down there.
we did, we spent a fair amount of time this morning looking at barrier alternatives. There's pluses and minuses to all of them. And then whether or not we could get anything quickly. We do have some big sign barricades that we could put down there. We're just concerned about them walking away or getting run over.
No lighting?
But yeah, we can try to get something down there kind of temporary to try to keep the place clear.
Is
Well,
there
that-
more
that'd
lighting
be-
down there now?
There's lighting from Camping World.
There's,
Oh, okay. It's by Camping World.
What
Yeah.
we'll do, Mayor, is we'll follow up. We'll push on the county and see if and also at the same time, see if there's anything that meets our needs on a temporary basis that satisfies the need to keep people out, but also keep them safe. And so if we
Hey,
can find.
Seth, if we got to go rent some barriers. And we can talk to the county later because we don't know where they're going to be, but there's going to be an RV there if we don't put something in there.
Okay, we can, we'll look at renting objects that are inconvenient to park around.
I was trying to think of how many city vehicles we could go park down there in the meantime.
we can't put the event trailer because that thing got valuable.
Stop right there.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, it's good work, Becky
right.
and Seth. Thank you.
City attorney report?
I have nothing, Mr. Council.
Awesome. Mayor council comments. We'll start with the mayor. You got any comments?
No comments. It's just fun looking at you guys.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I'll see you next meeting in person. So
Sounds good.
Safe travel.
Yeah, council's got any?
I do a report from the Citizen Noise Advisory Committee. When I was reading in detail here about some of the items that Greg had on here as far as attempting to get, I'm trying to find it really quick, participation somewhere in here.
Volunteers?
volunteer getting information back and forth. Um, Election methodology of information from board level and individual meetings and things like that. Is it? Okay.
Oh.
All right. So in our meeting that we had this last Saturday, we met for about 7 hours, I guess, for our annual planning, right? And one of the things that we came up with is that since the pandemic, we've not been able to get out and do our usual reach out with the public with noise as far as the airplanes are concerned and that type of thing. And if you'll notice that we haven't been to the night out, for example. And so we're going to want to get out and start doing that again. One year we had reached a point of where we were out to 629 visits with community events. And now we're at 0. And so we're going to try to build that back again. And so it was a very good meeting that we had with that. Surprisingly, though, we didn't have a quorum. And so we're looking to figure out if we can rebuild that again. So it was all the old people that have been on the committee, such as myself. I've been on it for at least 14 years or something like that. And so we're looking to figure out how we can, believe it or not, double the size of it. And we're at 12 people now, so we're going to look to increase it to 24. In other words, just basically double it. And I know that seems kind of weird to do that, but it's going to be done with alternates. And then that way the alternates can come in and take their place if we need to, because the amount of information that you have to learn is just tremendous to be on the Citizen Noise Advisory Committee. So I just pass that on to you because since I represent the 3 cities, Wood Village, Fairview, and Troutdale, at first they were asking us that we resign because we're mainly all white. And one of the things they were telling us is that we needed to have diversity. And then when they were finished with, this is the DEI people that were visiting us. And then when they were finished, they said, we don't want you to leave yet because of the amount of information that we carry. And I told them I was willing to get off right away if that was the case. My wife is looking for me to quit something, right? And I said, I'll be happy to leave. And I was the first person that said, no, we don't want you to leave, Mr. Clark. We want you to stay. And I was like, no, I'd be happy to get off. But anyway, so that's my report.
I just want to also share, after Counselor Simpson came and shared his update and report, he did connect me with the Metro housing individual. And so I will be having a meeting with them tomorrow and kind of sharing more, I guess, on the co-op model that the us as a city have been really pushing and working towards. And so hopefully we can get some further discussion on maybe some ideas and some help that Metro can put in place if they are seeking another housing levy of that nature. And then I have also been asked to testify at TriMet's council meeting tomorrow on the project enhancements that they are looking to do at East County, specifically with the line 25, which is extending Gleason all the way to Mount Hood. So going through Rockwood, through the Reynolds High School, and then ending up at Mount Hood Community College. So I will be doing that tomorrow morning as well.
Nice work.
And then on the agenda, we do have upcoming events. And so the Easter event is this Saturday. Caroline has sent an email out to all of us. If you are able to join us that day, there is a link to RSVP. And let's keep our fingers crossed for some sunny weather. Yeah. April 2nd is Caminando por el Bosque. Basically, it's a walk through the forest. So that is scheduled for April 2nd, 5:30 to 7:30. Paseo de Observando de Aves is bird watching, and so that is scheduled for April 14th, 1 PM to till 3 PM. So those are the next upcoming events.
And I'll just, if I could just let the council know, I will not be at the Easter egg hunt. We'll be arriving back in Wood Village on either the 1st or the 2nd.
And then I'll just take the opportunity to say I won't be at the first April meeting. That is my daughter's track meet, so I will be there that evening instead.
All right.
With that, we'll be adjourned.
14.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Good night,
Have a good
everybody.
evening, Mayor.
You bet.
Team minutes.
Bye, Mayor.
Bye.